This is part 2 of Miss deLivron's biology class all about alleles. So when I left off last time, I told you that I wanted you to complete the rest of this chart. Just so that you have it, because really this can be really difficult and we're about to do some practice. So I want to make sure that you have these down. I want you to make sure that you have what I have here. So we've been talking about homozygous dominant genotypes, homozygous recessive genotypes, heterozygous genotypes, or phenotypes. And we got the first 3 done, and then time didn't let me keep going. But if I look at this, these are both the same case. So we know between homozygous or heterozygous, same is going to be homozygous. And they are lowercase, so these are going to be recessive. Okay? Freckles is something that we see. It's like a picture. I could take a picture and you could see freckles. That's going to be a phenotype. These are different cases, big P, little p, so this is going to be heterozygous. And if you look, it has a capital, so you could put dominant, but heterozygous would just be fine. But heterozygous dominant is okay too. We have the same case, we have homozygous. And they are both capital, so we have that these are dominant. We have the same case again. This is homozygous. And because they are lowercase, they would be recessive. And then there are dimples. That is a phenotype. I want to point out a few things for you. Just because I know it's going to come up other places. Homozygous dominant, this first one, you have to have that whole thing to know that these would be 2 capital letters that are the same. Homozygous means the same, but homozygous you could have capital or lowercase. Dominant, that tells us that it's capital. The only thing that you need in the second line is heterozygous. Heterozygous means you're going to have 1 capital and 1 lowercase. Dominant is just kind of understood. So if I said heterozygous, I know I'm going to have a big one and a little one. And because there's a large capital there, that's just automatically dominant. Okay? When we come down to little n, the important thing from here is recessive. I don't need to know that this is homozygous. Recessive is always homozygous. Okay, so I could just talk about this being a recessive genotype. I don't have to say homozygous, recessive. Okay, so just wanted to point those out. So the highlight is really all that you would need. Okay, the big important one is homozygous dominant. That's the one where you're going to have both talking about are they the same or different cases, and dominant meaning that they're both going to be capital. But everything else, I can either just talk about it being homozygous or heterozygous and recessive. So just wanted to point that out to you. You might see that later. So we've just taken the genotypes, the letters, and we've kind of described what they are. This time they're going to give us a description, and we're going to have to write the letters, the alleles. So it says, write an example of the following terms using the letter big R and little r. Big R stands for being able to roll your tongue, and little r is not being able to roll your tongue. So when we look at number 9, it says that it wants a homozygous dominant alleles. Okay? Homozygous, that means the same. Dominant means capital. So I am going to write 2 capital R's. Homozygous dominant would be 2 capital letters. If I want to talk about hybrid, well, we know from our vocabulary that hybrid is the same thing as heterozygous. Okay, heterozygous. Heterozygous means different cases. So we're going to have a capital letter and a lowercase letter. And if you think about anything that has capital letters, capital letters, when you spell your name, they usually come first. Capital letters begin a sentence. So you were always going to see the capital letter written first and then the lowercase letter. Okay? And the last thing that you see is purebred recessive or homozygous recessive. And homozygous recessive, homozygous means the same case. Recessive means that they're going to be lowercase. Remember, the only things that you would really need is this recessive word, or you might see this purebred word. Either way, they're the same thing. Okay? Hybrid, heterozygous, same thing. Okay? So if we look at these guys, it says that big R means that you can roll your tongue. Little r means you can't roll your tongue. This is actually a trait that you get from your parents. So of these, big R, these guys are dominant. They're going to be able to roll their tongues. Big R, little r, this big R is dominant. It's going to cover up that little r. So this individual would be able to roll its tongue. But little r, you can't roll your tongue. So these guys cannot roll their tongues. So what we've just done is we have written out the genotypes, the alleles, the letters themselves. And we've also written out the phenotype, what you would see in this person. So next thing, you guys are going to be getting some practice. If you haven't already received it, the practice is called genotype and phenotype. All right, this practice you'll be able to put on page 134. Now this is double-sided, so I don't actually want you to staple this in yet, but it will go on 134. Put your name on it. I'm going to go through the directions with you, but then this is something that you will do on your own. So section number 1 says, for each genotype, for each of these letters, right? Genotype means the letters. Indicate whether it is heterozygous or homozygous. So heterozygous, that means different cases. And homozygous means the same case. And it says if it's heterozygous, write HE. If it's homozygous, write HO. So you need to look through these, and you need to look at their cases. Are these the same case, or are they different cases? Big A, those are the same cases. This is homozygous. It's not talking about dominant or recessive right now, just heterozygous or homozygous. We have big I, little I. Those are different cases. This is heterozygous. Okay, so that's how you're going to complete the rest of the practice for number 1. You should already have 2 correct for that. Number 2, for each of the genotypes below, so for each of the letters below, determine what phenotypes would be possible. So phenotypes, that's what you see. We're going to use a little bit of information to figure this out. This information in parentheses is really important. Purple flowers are dominant to white flowers. So purple flowers are going to be capital. And the white flowers will be lowercase. Okay, so those are going to be your recessive. Your white flowers are recessive. So purple flowers is what we're going to see if there's a capital letter with it. So first thing I see is 2 big P's. Well, big P is dominant. Dominants are the capital letters. It says purple flowers are dominant. So if I have 2 big P's, I'm going to see purple flowers. Big P, little p, there is still a capital letter there. Anytime that there's a capital letter, it's always going to be dominant. So dominant, purple flowers again are dominant. And the last one, This is little p, little p. So these are our lowercase. So purple flowers are dominant to white flowers. Our white flowers here are what's going to be recessive. We would see white flowers if a plant had a little p and a little p for their alleles. So that's how you're going to finish this next set. Brown eyes are dominant to blue eyes. Bobtail cats are recessive. That's important. Round seeds are dominant to wrinkled seeds. Section 3 says for each phenotype, what we see, list the genotype or types. There could be two. The letters. So remember to use the letter of the dominant trait. So here's an example. We're actually going to do this one over here. Pointed heads are dominant to round heads. So we're going to use the letter of the dominant one. Dominant would be pointed. So that means anytime that I want to be pointed, I'm going to use a big P. Those are pointed heads. And that is dominant. That means that a little p, I'm going to use a cursive P for that so they look different. A cursive P, do the best that you can. That's going to be round. A round head. And that's recessive. So there's two ways to make pointed heads. I could have a big P and another big P. Or I could be heterozygous. I could be big P, little p. But the only way that I can be round is to have two little p's. If I had two large p's, if I had two capital P's, I would have a dominant trait and I would be pointed. Okay, so try doing straight hair is dominant to curly hair. You're going to use a capital S for straight hair. Don't use C for curly. You're going to want to try and use a lowercase s. I try and do cursive s's. Okay, so cursive s looks like that. Or you just really need to make the size difference apparent. Okay, so you really need to have a big S and a little s if you can't do cursive. Now flip over with me to the back. The back is a chart. Don't get scared about this. It's not bad, okay? Up at the top, it says genotype again is the alleles that an organism has, and phenotype is the appearance or behavior that the organism exhibits. According to Mendel's law of independent assortment, though, different genes can be inherited independently from each other. This can give us a wide variety of different phenotypes. In the chart below, look at the genotypes and give the corresponding phenotype, or look at the phenotype and give corresponding genotypes. Some boxes will deal with multiple traits at the same time. This isn't too bad, I promise you that. We've got A's right here, capitals, angry, lowercase is happy. B's, big B is going to be big, little b is going to be small. For letter C, we have big C is cool, little c is hot. For letter D, we have big D is dense, little d is intelligent. And for E's, we have big E is energetic, little e is tired. So in this column, the first column, you have a genotype and we need to figure out the phenotype. So we have big A, little a. Well, this is going to say, hey, we have a dominant phenotype here because we have a big A. So we come up to, what does big A mean? Well, big A means that we would see something that is angry. Now, angry is not something that you're really going to get inherited, but for this, that's what it's asking you to do. If you come down here, it's giving you the phenotype for energetic. Well, energetic is starting with E, so energetic, there's two phenotypes that we could have. We could either have big E for energetic, or another way that we could do it is big E, little e. You might have more than one trait. Big B, little b. Well, that would be, hey, dominant, that's going to be big. And little c would be hot. Happy, cool, intelligent. Well, happy is going to be little a, little a. Cool is capital C, so big C, big C. Intelligent, little d, little d.